Outlaw found a preacher's daughter left for dead in the desert, with buzzards already circling. The desert sun beat down like a blacksmith's hammer on the redstone canyons of New Mexico territory. Late September 1878. Dust storms spun through the brush like angry spirits, but Jake Morrison heard something else cutting through the wind, a sound that made his blood run cold. A woman's cry, weak and desperate. He yanked his black horse to a stop, leather saddle creaking in the dead air, and cocked his head toward the canyon walls. There it was again, human, hurting, barely hanging on. Jake's weathered face hardened as he swung down from his saddle, spurs ringing against the rocks. This trail hadn't seen riders in days, cutting between those towering red walls like a wound in the earth. His boots ground against loose stones as he led his horse forward, following that sound. It got clearer as he rounded a sharp bend near some twisted oak trees, fighting to stay alive in this godforsaken heat. And that's when he saw her. A young woman, maybe 19, tied tight to the biggest oak with rope that had cut deep into her wrists. Her arms were stretched high over her head, toes barely touching ground. The sun had burned her face raw, lips cracked like old boot leather. Her simple brown dress was ripped at the shoulder, hair caked with dust and dried blood from a nasty cut on her temple. Above her head, nailed to the bark with rusty spikes, a rough wooden sign read, "Christians ain't welcome here." She was out cold, breathing so shallow you could barely see her chest move. Her head hung forward like a rag doll's. At the base of that tree, torn pages from what looked like a Bible scattered in the hot breeze. A wooden cross, busted clean in half, lay stomped in the dirt next to a small leather bag. Jake didn't think twice. He pulled his knife from his boot and cut through those ropes in one clean slice. She dropped forward into his arms, light as a tumbleweed, her body limp from pure exhaustion. Her skin burned with fever, but her breathing stayed steady, weak but steady. "Easy now," he whispered, though she couldn't hear him. He carried her to the shade of the canyon wall and dug his water bottle from his saddlebags along with a clean shirt. First, he trickled water between her cracked lips, then soaked that shirt and pressed it gentle against her forehead. The girl's eyes fluttered open, pale blue like winter sky. She blinked slow, trying to focus. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Are you an angel?" Jake Morrison, wanted in 3 territories for bank robbery and killing, almost cracked a smile. No miss. Just a man who happened to ride by.
If you're hooked by this unlikely rescue, subscribe now and drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching from?
She tried sitting up, winced hard, and fell back against the canyon wall. Jake steadied her with one hand, kept that water bottle ready with the other. "Don't move too fast," he said. "You've been under that sun way too long." Her eyes darted to his gun belt, then back to his face, rough, unshaven, with scars along his jaw that told stories of hard living and harder fights. But his hands were gentle as a mother's. "My name is Sarah Fletcher. My father, he preaches the good word." Jake nodded, gave her another sip of water. "How'd you end up tied to that tree, Miss Fletcher?" She closed her eyes, gathering what little strength she had left. When she spoke again, her voice was stronger but shaken like autumn leaves. "Raiders hit our mission 3 days back. 5 of them, faces painted up, but they weren't Indians. White man pretending to be something they weren't. Said they were cleaning the territory of Bible folks." Jake's jaw went tight. He'd seen enough evil to know when men used excuses to cover their black hearts. "They took everything we had, burned our little chapel to the ground, scattered our people like sheep, shot Brother Thomas when he tried to shield the children. They said I was too pretty to kill quick, so they dragged me out here to let the desert finish me slow." She pulled her torn sleeve tighter around her shoulder, trying to cover herself. "Said it was justice, that Christians brought nothing but trouble to their land." Jake walked over to where those torn Bible pages lay scattered in the dirt. He gathered them careful-like, brushing off the dust. Most were from Psalms, the parts about walking through dark valleys. He folded them neat and tucked them into Sarah's leather bag. "Your father?" he asked quiet. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she held them back strong. "Don't know. They split us up when they took the mission. He might be. Lord, I pray he's still breathing." She looked up at Jake, studying his face in the shade. "You're him, aren't you? Jake Morrison. Blackjack Morrison." Jake went stone still, hand moving toward his gun out of pure habit. Most folks who knew his name either ran like hell or went for iron. Sarah did neither. "I've seen your face on wanted posters in every town from here to Colorado, but wanted men don't usually cut down Christian girls from trees." Jake settled back beside her, still wary. "Maybe I should have left you hanging there. But you didn't, and that tells me more about the real Jake Morrison than any poster with your face on it ever could." She took another drink, color slowly coming back to her cheeks. "Why are you out here, Mr. Morrison? This isn't exactly the main road to anywhere." Jake was quiet for a long spell, watching those dust devils dance in the distance like they were putting on a show just for him. "Running," he said finally, "same as I've been doing for 15 years. Sarah studied his face, those hard lines around his eyes, the way his hand never moved far from his gun. "Running from the law or from the man you used to be?" Before Jake could find an answer to that, his horse snorted nervous. Jake was on his feet like lightning, hand wrapped around his coat. Way off in the distance, barely visible against those canyon walls, dust was rising from the desert floor. Riders, more than one, coming fast down the main trail. "They're coming back," Sarah breathed, fear creeping into her voice like cold water. Jake grabbed his rifle from the saddle and checked his rounds. Full load. "How many?" Sarah struggled to her feet, using the canyon wall to hold herself up. "5 of them when they left me. Maybe 6 now if they picked up another gun along the way. They said they'd come back to make sure I was good and dead." Jake looked at her, this slip of a girl who'd survived 3 days tied to a tree in hell's own backyard, who hadn't cursed God or man despite losing everything she held dear. Something stirred deep in his chest, something he thought died years ago in a blaze of gunfire and bad choices. "Not today," he said, voice low and hard as iron. "Not while I'm still breathing." Jake's eyes swept the canyon walls, calculating angles and cover like he was planning a bank job. "There's a cave about 50 yards up that ridge," he said, pointing to a narrow ledge carved into the red stone by wind and time. "Think you can make it up there?" Sarah nodded, though her legs shook like she'd been riding hard for days. "I can try my best." He helped her gather those scattered Bible pages and made sure they were safe in her bag. Then he took her arm, supporting her weight as they climbed that steep, rocky path. His horse followed quiet, trained to move like a ghost when trouble came calling. The cave was deeper than it looked from below, carved out by centuries of desert storms. Jake got Sarah settled behind a big boulder near the back wall, then took his position at the cave mouth with a clear view of the trail below. The riders were closer now. 6 men on horseback, faces painted with mud and charcoal like they were heading to war. White men playing Indian, just like Sarah said. "You stay down low," Jake whispered. "No matter what happens, you stay quiet and keep your head below that rock." Sarah clutched her bag to her chest like it was the most precious thing in the world. "Mr. Morrison, Jake, you don't have to do this. You could just ride out. They're not hunting you." Jake checked his rifle, then his pistol, both loaded and ready for whatever came next. "Could," he said simple. "Won't." He'd spent 15 years running from the man he used to be. Maybe it was time to run toward the man he might become. The riders reached that oak tree below. Their leader, a tall drink of water with a scraggly beard and an old cavalry hat, got down and looked at those cut ropes. "Fresh tracks lead up the ridge," he called to his men. "Someone cut her loose." Another rider, younger, with the kind of cruel eyes that enjoyed other people's pain, spat in the dirt. "Probably some drifter looking to have his fun before she died anyway." The leader shook his head. "No, These tracks are too fresh. Whoever did this took her alive and breathing. They started climbing toward the cave, horses picking their way up that narrow trail, single file. Jake counted them careful. 6 rifles, 6 sidearms, but they were bunched together on a path with nowhere to scatter when the lead started flying. He'd faced worse odds and lived to tell about it. Sarah's breathing was shallow behind him, but steady. Strong girl, he thought, stronger than most men he'd known in his hard life. "Come on out," the leader shouted when they reached that ledge. "We know you're holed up in there. Send the girl out and maybe we let you ride away in one piece." Jake's answer was the metallic sound of his rifle lever working. That sound bounced off the canyon walls like thunder rolling in. "Here's my deal," Jake called back, voice steady as bedrock. "You boys turn them horses around, ride out of here, and forget you ever saw this place. Maybe I let you keep on breathing God's good air." Hard laughter echoed from below. "You got any idea who you're jawing with, stranger? This here's Matthias Kane. We own this territory from here to the Colorado line." Jake knew that name. Kane's bunch had been terrorizing settlements and missions from here to Denver, hiding their crimes behind painted faces and false flags. "Don't care if you're President Hayes himself. That girl's under my protection now. That makes her untouchable." The shooting started a heartbeat later, and all hell broke loose. Jake's first shot dropped the youngest rider before the boy could even clear leather. The canyon walls turned that gunfire into rolling thunder, bouncing off red stone like the voice of judgment itself. Jake rolled left as bullets chipped rock where his head had been, came up firing smooth as silk. 2 more raiders went down in quick succession. Jake's aim was cold, clean, and final as a preacher's amen. Matthias Kane and his remaining boys scrambled for cover behind scattered rocks, but that narrow ledge didn't give them much room to hide. "Kill 'em!" Kane screamed over the gunfire. "Kill 'em both and let the buzzards sort it out." A bullet whistled past Jake's ear, close enough to trim his hair. Another one shattered stone near Sarah's hiding spot, sending rock chips flying. She didn't scream, didn't cry out, just pressed herself lower behind that boulder, still holding tight to her torn Bible pages like they were a lifeline. "This don't end here, stranger," Kane shouted from behind his poor excuse for cover. "We got friends. We got a whole army coming." Jake's next shot sent rock fragments into Kane's face, drawing blood and a string of curses that would make a devil blush. "Your army's looking mighty thin right about now," Jake called back. The 4th raider broke cover, charging up that slope with a wild war cry like he thought he was some kind of hero in a dime novel. Jake's bullet took him center mass, spun him around like a child's top, and sent him tumbling back down that rocky trail to join his dead friends. Only Kane and 1 other man left now, pinned behind rocks with nowhere to run and hell coming for them. "Last chance," Jake offered, though his voice carried no mercy in it. "Drop those guns and ride out while you still can. Won't ask again, and I won't miss." Instead of taking that gift of life, Kane's answer was a desperate charge, both men rushing that cave mouth with guns blazing and death in their eyes. Jake stepped into the open like he was walking to Sunday service, drew his Colt with lightning speed, and put 2 bullets center mass into each man before they'd covered half the distance. Matthias Kane hit the ground 3 feet from the cave entrance, his painted face staring up at nothing but desert sky and buzzard wings. Silence fell over that canyon like a heavy blanket. Gunsmoke drifted on the hot wind, carrying with it the smell of justice served and debts paid in full. Jake holstered his weapon and walked to where Sarah still crouched behind that boulder. She looked up at him, not with fear, but with something close to wonder. "It's finished," he said, simple. Sarah rose slow, stepped past those bodies without giving them a second glance, and walked to the cave mouth. She pulled those torn Bible pages from her bag and read quiet but clear. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." Her voice was steady, unbroken by all she'd been through. "He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." Jake watched her, this slip of a girl who'd faced the devil himself and come out with her faith stronger than ever. Something in his chest, something he thought died in a hail of bullets years ago, stirred back to life like embers catching flame. "Your father," he said, meaning every word. "I'll help you find him. We'll ride together until we do." Sarah turned to him, tears finally flowing free, but her smile was bright as lightning in a summer storm. "I know we will, Jake Morrison. I know we will." She walked over and touched his arm gentle. "You saved more than my life today. You saved your own soul." As they rode out together, the sun began its slow descent toward the western peaks, painting the whole desert in shades of gold and promise. Behind them, the desert wind was already covering the dead with dust, erasing the last traces of evil from this sacred place. And somewhere in the distance, carried on that same wind, the sound of church bells rang clear and true across the territory. Jake Morrison had spent 15 years running from his past, but today he'd found something worth riding toward. Sometimes redemption comes not from a preacher's sermon or a judge's pardon, but from choosing to stand between the innocent and those who would do them harm. In this harsh land where mercy was scarce and justice even rarer, two unlikely souls had found in each other the sanctuary they'd both been searching for.
Thank you for riding with us through this tale of redemption, faith, and unexpected grace. In a territory where mercy was rare and heroes were unlikely, Jake and Sarah proved that sometimes salvation comes from the most surprising places. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that even the hardest hearts can find redemption, subscribe to Tony Tells Tales for more unforgettable journeys into the untamed American frontier, where bullets fly but hope never dies. Hit that bell so you never miss a story that just might change how you see the world.